Mining experts, leaders, and innovators. Welcome to MEMO 2019 in Kamloops, brought to you by CIM. And we are doing Mining Now in partnership with CIM and Crownsmen Partners. Today on the show, this is day 2 of the show and our 3rd episode, and Jill Tsolinas is here. You are the executive director, I like how I'm telling you who you are, the executive director of BC Centre of Training Excellence in Mining, or CTEM, as you taught me to easily say it.
It's way easier.
Way easier.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the softball question right now, and then it's going to get really intense as the interview goes on. Can you tell me a little bit about CTEM? What are they offering? What are they doing? Who are they working with? You know, just the general overview.
Sure. I mean, CTEM is young for this industry. We were started in 2012, and it came out of the Ministry of Advanced Education. They realized that training for the mining industry perhaps wasn't as modern and reflective of what's happening on the mine sites, what the needs are. So they wanted to bring a collaborative group together. How do we bring industry, post-secondary training providers, government, communities, how do we bring them all to the same table so that we can actually work together collaboratively? So they created this Center of Training Excellence in Mining, which I get to lead. So it's fun to bring in all the different parties and to find common ground and find the best way to train people for the jobs of today and the jobs for tomorrow.
It's a very interesting, and being around the industry, I know that there's definitely a demand for it. One thing I want to be clear of is the reach of the organization. Like, where are you now? Is the organization North American, or which region are you serving specifically?
We really focus on British Columbia.
Oh, okay.
That's our main focus. But with any great idea or innovative spot, we really want to be able to allow that to flow to all the other areas of Canada and even throughout the world. So some of the new innovative projects we're doing, we already are getting feedback that other provinces are trying to pick them up and start to implement them. And then the resources that we have online, it's international. So we do get probably about 40% of our online presence is coming from people outside of North America.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? And so how do you choose a project like the framework? And I'll be honest, it's new to me understanding what CTEM does. So how are you picking what you're going into, what you're training people for, what you're tackling, who you're bringing in? How does all that come together?
We start with the need. So we've done labor market information studies to know what are the jobs that are in demand today. And we're evolving into what are the jobs of tomorrow, which is a little bit more tricky because you have to think outside the box for where the future might go. But we know that there's needs now that we can start focusing on. So the base is, what are the needs that we can address? And then we look at our projects as, can they be strategic? Can they be provincial? And can they then be applied to other mine sites, not just one area?
Right.
And once we think we have a project that could grow and be a provincial influencer, then we have to see, can it be collaborative? So can we bring industry and post-secondary to the table? And can we involve different community reps so that we know the project we're doing is succinct and able to move forward? And then we like to make sure there's specific goals and deliverables so that whatever we do at the table can easily be packaged and carried out to other groups to move forward.
So I just kind of want to clarify that. So if let's say you're talking, there's something comes out, I don't know if you talk to them directly or you get information that a mine has a certain demand, there's a shortage. Then, so what you're saying is you're essentially taking that information and then doing research to see if that's a scalable province-wide demand, or if that's just a one-off. Is that so?
Or if they're willing to allow that project to be scalable. So there's some mines or some specific jobs that they might want to just have isolated to their own company.
Right.
And that's understandable.
Yeah, of course.
Whether it's because of new technology or it's just a really odd segment. But for CTEM, because we're provincial, we would need to let that stay with the mine site to own that project.
Right.
But if they want to say, hey, we've got an idea that might help other mines across the province or internationally, and we're open to bringing in other ideas to make our situation better, and then take those ideas and share them back.
Wow.
That's the projects that we will come into. So who do we bring to the table that can help make this training better and more applicable. And then everybody agrees to then share that information so that it's actually paying it forward, so to speak.
So then is CTEM actually are they taking that, let's say the mine goes, yeah, this is something we can share, this is something that's going to make the industry better. Do they then share that out, and are you putting that together in a tangible way so that a student can then take that information, a mine can then look at that, how they are going to apply it and train their team? Is CTEM actually putting all that together as well, or working with the mine to put it together?
We help to package it.
Okay.
We don't deliver the training ourselves.
Right.
So we'll bring people to the table to deliver the training. But like an example of the project we're just focused on right now is called Underground Miner Training.
I saw that, yeah.
And we just recently had 40 different individuals get trained through the curriculum that we developed. It ends up being a bit of a process because you first have to determine what are the baseline skills for this entry-level job.
Right.
What do we need to train them for? But then we worked into it transferable skills, and that then allows the mine site to know who is good to hire that already has some skill sets that are easy to adapt into the mining sense.
Right.
Then we developed a curriculum framework. And what's so challenging, what I love, but what is so challenging, is every mine site is different. It doesn't matter if it's open pit or underground. There's different commodities, there's different vehicles being used, there's different extraction methods. So we can't just do one product that will meet everybody's needs. So we had to be willing to think outside the box and evolve it to be a framework to say this is what the province needs, this is what the mine site needs for theory, and then this is what we need to do for actual training on the ground. And then the next mine site has to evolve it because they have different equipment, but they have that package to start with.
And then in a year or two, there's going to be new technology, new ways of doing things, and then it's just basically adding on as you go, right?
How do you evolve it to meet your site's specific needs? Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the labor market challenges. I was reading through one because you sent me a presentation, so I went through it, and there's 60,000 plus workers retiring, and I wanted to clarify: is that in British Columbia?
That's national.
National, Canadian,
Yes.
then. Okay,
Yeah.
but that's still a huge amount of work.
BC has the highest amount.
Oh, BC does have it.
Yeah.
And it sort of struck me as this is not just workers. It's not just the number. It's the knowledge that comes with 60,000. I don't know what the average person has. I'm sure there's stats out there, but let's say they have an average of 20 years in the industry. That's thousands and thousands of hours. It's almost 1 million, actually, of hours of knowledge that's now going to be leaving the workforce.
Or that specific site.
Right, yeah.
As well. That's probably one of the most significant struggles that we're going to face in the next decade of our industry is the knowledge that we're losing. 10 years ago, we were talking about the knowledge drain that's happening into the U.S. or internationally with other countries realizing that Canada produces really good employees. And so therefore, they were kind of getting plucked away and taken, which is a beautiful compliment, but it creates another challenge. And now it's not just competing with the brain drain, so to speak, going elsewhere. It's actually individuals retiring, and they have that right to retire. They've worked hard. They're ready to exit, and we're going to end up having this gap within the industry of new people coming in, and we're trying to develop some different tools for how do we retain that knowledge, how do we share it, how do we capture it, kind of what you guys are doing here. How do we capture that knowledge so that it lasts generations and we can keep building on it?
Yeah, I think that's, and on a side note, I think CIM is doing, I'm really, and I said to you off air, I'm really happy that they're doing this with us because just for the industry, because there are people that want this knowledge, they want to be there. But I've had conferences that I really wanted to go and see the speakers, but I'm just away. I can't make it. So now this kind of thing gives them an opportunity to catch up. And I wanted to go into the rural and remote locations of mine. That was one of the challenges I saw in your presentation. And then along with getting youth into the workforce. And those two challenges, I think, go sort of hand in hand because a lot of young people, they're not wild about going into these remote. There are some that love it, but there is some hesitation. And is that Is that something that these courses and these opportunities can get youth into? Do you go after youth trying to get them into these programs?
So, in the mining industry, there's a number of underrepresented groups. Youth is one of them. We define youth as age 19 to 24, so slightly different than what the average person might be thinking about
Right.
youth being a primary school or secondary school. There's youth, there's women, there's Indigenous, and immigrants are the four key underrepresented groups we know that are here in the mining industry, and those are opportunities for us to fill the gap of individuals that are leaving. So let's try to widen our pool of who we're bringing into the workforce so that it's a easier access for the mining industry. And that does mean that training needs to evolve a bit
Right. It does. Yeah.
because we're training for different skill sets. We're training for different personalities that are coming forward. And a lot of that is being picked up by the post-secondary schools because they're realizing that with the individuals coming through. With mining, a lot of training that happens is on the site. So how do we then take that knowledge from post-secondary and share it with the site in order to evolve training there so that it's more welcoming to females, to Indigenous,
Yeah.
to youth, to immigrants. And one of the easiest ways is to really start working on respect and respecting the skills just like we respect the equipment. Because if you respect me, I'm going to feel more comfortable working with you,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So, kind of the base level is to really look at let's expand our worldview and realize there's much more to respect from these individuals coming to the table.
It's interesting you brought up immigrants because my wife actually works in an immigration society, and one of the things that we've talked about is people that when they come into this country, not from all countries, it's a vast generalization, but there are countries that they're coming in, and in the country they're coming from, working at a mine is not an elite job. Whereas in Canada, working at a mine is very high paying. You're usually in an area where there's a lower cost of living. It's a
Yeah.
very elite job.
It's a bit of a win-win.
It is, and there is definitely a disconnect with some of the people that are coming from these countries, just not realizing where the opportunity is.
Yeah.
They're going into all these other industries because where they're coming from, that's the elite job, and they're not realizing I have the tools and the opportunities to go work in a mine where they'd be very qualified, they'd be very good at it, and they're missing out on a $100,000 a year job.
It's also geography.
Yes.
So often when immigrants fly in, they're flying into the major airports.
Yes.
So Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. And there's not a lot of mines around the big cities. They're
Yeah.
usually in more rural, remote areas. And so you don't see your friend down the street or your family that's already been here isn't already working at a mine site. So they're not seeing it as a job. But the biggest disconnect we found with skilled immigrants is from the skilled immigrant side, not knowing where to look for those jobs. The mining industry first posts jobs on their own websites.
Right.
Then we'll go to mining specific job sites. Skilled immigrants coming in are really going first to the government website. And so there's just a disconnect there for where to look for those jobs. And then there's also a disconnect with the society view of immigration and not realizing that Canada, when we have individuals coming in, they're highly skilled. It's one of the unique aspects of being so far north. If people move here, it's because they want to have a good job, and there's a big, robust process for that. So there's a little bit of disconnect on both sides.
Well, it was a funny thing because I saw in some of the Canadian media there was some release about the U.S. was hinting at going on to a point system, and there was some outrage. I went, we are on a point system. Canada is one of the leaders in how we bring in immigration because we are very much on a point and demand basis. That's how we bring in people into this country. And I don't think even a lot of Canadians realize that.
Yeah.
And so I think for the mining industry, being able to tap into that more, I think would just have a huge benefit.
I think there's both sides that need to kind of come together because we have to be really cautious not to forget the local communities. And so my dream is that for skilled immigrants, they'll find a community that they want to live in.
Yeah.
And then at that community, there'll be a mine site, and they'll go that way. just because there's more stability for that individual rather than just coming specifically for a mine site. But what's really passionate for me is when we're looking at the labor force of a mine site is to try to be as representative of the local community
Yes, that
you can
yeah.
pull from, because then it's a win-win.
Well, like
right?
we're here in Kamloops, and I grew up here originally, and seeing a lot of the guys and girls that were coming that I kind of grew up with, and now all of a sudden they're working in some of these, new gold and tech, and their minds. And these are good people. They're hardworking people, and now they have an opportunity to have these good jobs. And sometimes when I see sort of a negative spin on mining, it's very frustrating for me because I know the people. I'm living in Vancouver. I'm fine, but but I know the people that are here,
Yeah.
and how much they want to be here. They don't want to have to move to a city. They want the mountains and the outdoors, and they get to be mechanics and engineers and these amazing jobs.
Highly skilled jobs.
Highly skilled jobs.
Highly
That's right.
skilled. And
Yeah.
we often forget that the trades is an apprentice system. So
Right.
you start it, you start with your theory in the classroom, and then you get hands-on, and you go back for more theory and more hands-on. And it's a robust skill that takes many years to get qualified, especially for the Red Seal. So there's a lot of just lack of awareness, I guess, on how skilled all the jobs are. And even the jobs that we call entry level, it's not a word I really enjoy because it almost makes it sound like there's no
Yeah.
skills to
It's
it.
not a fast food restaurant entry level.
It's you're working very expensive equipment and you're getting trained on the job, and it just happens that that's the terminology we've placed on,
Right.
on
Yeah.
that.
Well, maybe CTEM
we
should-
need to evolve.
Yeah.
We need to evolve some of our terminology
I was
to
gonna
catch
say,
up with the times.
It sounds like
Yeah.
this is something CTEM should be doing. I wonder the forecast of mining employment, and I'll ask you to kind of walk me through this a little bit. There's the hiring requirements. If you could just sort of help me understand the numbers a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you wrote a few down. But you kind of track who's retiring, who's come in. Can you kind of help me make sense of that? We're going to show
Yeah.
it on the screen, but just help me understand what we're actually looking at.
Sure. So CTEM partnered with the Mining Industry Human Resource Council, which we call MEIR. They're a national body that really focuses on the labor needs of the mining industry. And so they have labor market researchers on staff. So we partnered with them to do all the data analytics using StatCan data, using anecdotal data. Where is our industry going now and in the future? And the report we released in 2017, it's based on 2016 information. So within that decade to 2026, they were able to show that we could need 5,000 new people up to 20,000 new employees. And that's based on a contractionary scenario. So let's say the demand for minerals goes down and we don't need to have as many mines. We would still need to hire 5,000 to 6,000 new people trained within the next 10 years.
Just based on who's leaving the industry
and just in BC.
just in BC. Okay, that's important to understand.
Not the national level.
Wow.
And then if it expands, if the demand for minerals does increase, there could be a need for up to 20,000. And the numbers don't sound that big until you think about training programs and getting individuals on the ground. So if a class size is 20, well, think of how many class sizes you're going to need for 20,000 jobs. And this is based on individuals that are retiring as well as individuals that are leaving the industry for different reasons. And it's almost a 50-50 split for those that are retiring. So part of what we're trying to get the industry to be a bit more aware of is the retention for individuals in the mining sector. And how do we help to retain that knowledge that we talked about earlier so that we're keeping it here within British Columbia and keeping it here at our mines. But also, how do we find ways to make a workplace even better than what it is right now? Because that's going to help everybody to be proud of where they work. And when we're proud of what we do, we tend to share it a bit more with our friends and family.
That's
and that
true.
helps to dispel the myths of what people can think of mining was 40 years ago versus what mining is today.
Right, and mines being willing to, I was saying off the air that we've tried to get mines on, and now, through CIM, the mines are going to come on. Taminco, Tech, Newgold, they're all coming on the show to talk, and that's a huge step forward for them to come on and do a 20, 30-minute interview and talk about their operations. It's an amazing amount of information that people will consume, and it's great to see.
And the mining industry needs to hear these stories because
Yes.
some of us that work at the mine site, we don't realize what's happening with energy conservation or with the environmental side or baseline studies where people invest years just to know what's happening on the ground before they actually go in to disturb it so we can make sure we get it back as close as we can. And you don't know about that unless you're sharing these stories, even within our own industry.
Yeah, it's
we don't
hard.
realize
It's hard
how far
to
we've evolved.
promote what you don't understand or you
Yeah.
don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of a theme with CTEM and even this event here is the partnerships, and I kind of wanted to just touch on them and sort of highlight some of the people because I'm seeing TRU and Newgold and New Afton, and so could you kind of give that list of, and I brought a few of them, they'll be up on the screen as well,
Sure.
but who all is involved in CTEM, kind of bringing it to the floor?
So CTEM itself has 24 advisory council members.
Wow.
And they come from industry, post-secondary, Indigenous, community, and government. And we have a student rep as well, just to try to make sure we're grounded in the post-secondary realm of things. So that's the perspective that comes to the table for me every time I meet with them, which is different than almost any other industry out there. Right now, we're starting to evolve to bringing more people to the table, but CTEM is doing it, and we're proud of having everybody at the table. And so then for our projects, we try to make sure there's similarities to that diversity that comes to the table. So the most recent one that we've been sharing here at CIM is for underground miner, which is one of the in-demand jobs we have here in BC. And we had Thompson Rivers University, which we affectionately call TRU here in Kamloops, Newgold, New Afton, so that's an underground mine that's here and just outside of Kamloops. And then as well, we had MIHR, the Mining Industry Human Resource Council, involved as well. And the reason why we really wanted them to be at the table is for transferable skills. So the training that we do on this, can these be skills that are recognized for their whole life? Not just at this particular mine site. And that's what MIR is exceptional at. So they came in and allowed an assessment of the training that's happening for everybody newly trained at New Afton. And those skills are recorded in the national database, and they get to keep those for their whole career. And then it shows how they can upskill if they want, or how they can just simply get more hours on that particular piece of equipment to become more qualified.
Do they develop certification then from that?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's neat is for this new training that's evolved where we have post-secondary and industry coming together, the post-secondary is giving a certificate saying, yes, you did the training, this is what you've accomplished. And then MIR comes in and couples that and says, now as you get your skills developed, we're going to recognize it on a national level. So if New Afton does need to close down at some point, those individuals can have the pride and the knowledge that this is the skills they have.
And they can
take
present it in a way that's very clear to the next company, right?
So we really want transferability so that anybody coming in, the training isn't a loss. If in a couple years they want to do something different, they know those transferable skills they have.
And I was looking, I mean, these are 2 to 3 week courses, 12 to 15 people. Like that's kind of is that sort of the model for this?
For this particular one, this is underground miner doesn't have a diploma or a degree or a technology, which a lot of other jobs in mining have. So within BC, we have 120 different careers that come together to make the mining industry work. Within that, there's different amounts of training that's needed for each job. With underground miner, it's not a trade or a technology. So how do we really have the confidence individuals are trained when they go on this heavy equipment? So what we design on a provincial level is that we would do 2 weeks of theory, so in classroom. During that time, at least once a week, they're at site doing a tour or getting used to what's happening. Because sometimes you can love a job, and then you get to the work site and you realize it's just not quite the right fit for me. And it's hard to do.
I think that's happened with me.
Now you're here. you know, in an interview process, it's really hard to showcase what the mine site is like, what the culture is.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure the first day of training, they were getting a tour of the site. And that way, if they weren't comfortable, they lost one day. It wasn't 5 weeks of their lives or 2 years
Right.
of their lives. But it also then meant that the training was so much more applicable because they could see what they were learning about theory. So by starting with theory, it laid a groundwork of what mining is and where can that go in the province. And we had a post-secondary trainer as well as industry person that's been on the equipment for almost 2 decades, side by side, helping them with the theory. And then 3 weeks, really intense work, actually on site, learning the equipment, going through the safety checks, doing the walkarounds, and getting those first hours on. Now, that time frame doesn't allow you to have the full certification from MIR because you need to have 1,000 hours on the equipment
Oh, I see. That's probably a good thing.
to really know it.
Yeah.
But it gets them that comfortability that now they can springboard off and get that certification and move forward. We just wanted to make sure there was a strong base. So when people are coming in, they're confident on the equipment. The industry is confident with the individuals.
Right.
And out of confidence is respect, and everything blossoms from there.
Yeah. It's nice. I'm glad because when we first came in, Roy Slack, he brought together a few, and there was a list of speakers,
Yeah.
and he highlighted your presentation and you and CTEM to come and do the presentation, and it's clear to see why, because it's very clear that in 10 years, as people are retiring, and we need the industry. Everybody here at this event and in the mining industry wants the industry to improve and to grow, and what CTEM is doing and all the partnerships that go into it, that's where it needs
We're
to be.
stronger together.
It's very simple and true. Thank you very much for coming on, Jill. I appreciate it.
Thank
I hope
you.
you enjoyed it. Wasn't too tough.
You did a great job. Thank you very much.
I'm going to sign off on this camera here. Thank you very much for watching the third episode, everyone. However you're watching, there's going to be a subscribe button, a follow button. There's going to be on CIM. They've got their platforms. So whatever that platform that you are listening to my voice or seeing my face on, subscribe to that to get more, because we are going to be producing more content, getting in more leaders, innovators, experts. Mining now is just at the beginning, and I think the future of mining itself is going into a whole new era. So I hope you join us, and thank you very much for watching.